Hey guys, Jack's a free auto mechanic. Today we're going to put on a new upgrade for our Jeep, a Smittybilt winch and a mounting plate. We've had a hold of this for a few months and I've run into a situation where it's going to be pretty convenient to have a winch on the front of it. So we're going to go ahead and do that today. We purchased this 9,500 pound winch, XRC Smittybilt. It does have a steel cable. Some people prefer the synthetic. Some people prefer the steel cable. I went with the tried and true steel cable. I'm not so convinced with the synthetic ropes just yet. They're still a little too new for me. I'm going to let them see how they turn out, I guess, so to speak. But that's what we're going to work on today. First thing we got to do is we need to install a mounting plate. And what that involves doing is removing this piece, our hooks, putting the plate on there. So let's get after that. So like I said, we're going to need this mounting plate. And it comes with a hardware kit. Now when I opened mine, this part was cut open. Some of the washers and pieces and spacers were missing. So I called this number. This I guess is for technical support or warranty. I gave them a shout out, and the guy on the phone told me that it wasn't his problem, that I needed to deal with whoever I bought it from or whoever shipped it directly. Whatever that means to you. I don't have time to wait for it anyway. Alright, so let's go in, see if we can find what we need and get this thing put together. So I ended up going to the local hardware stores and bought a bunch of washers. And hopefully we've got enough to do the job. But I implore you to look through here, and there is an actual list of everything that's supposed to be included. Look at it, make sure you got all the washers and nuts and spacers. Mine was missing one of these spacers that you will need on the TJ model, and I was also missing all the flat washers. So I had to go down there and spend the extra money to get all these extra washers to make sure we get it installed and get it back on the road today. So the next thing we're going to do is we get that thing prepped to get it installed. So you've got two 10mm bolts on each side to remove this cover, and then we're going to need a T55 to remove these bolts that are holding our hooks on. So you need your tools. That's your T50. It's one of those Torx bit deals, or T55. So I'm just going through and breaking these all loose first, and then I'll go back and use a ratchet to get them the rest of the way. And by all means, if you've got air tools, use them. Now you're going to want to make sure that you hang on to these bolts, because they're a little bit longer than the ones that they give with you. So if you want to put these hooks back on, you'll need these bolts. So pay attention to where you put them. Next, we're going to need to take the two front sway bar mount bolts loose. It's going to require a 15mm socket. We'll just remove just the two front. Next, the instructions tell us that we're going to need to use these two spacers, which unfortunately mine was missing one of them. So I'm going to try and use some washers on the other side and stack them up to be the same thickness. Now, to be fair, I did also contact the seller of this product, and being that it's a weekend, they haven't responded back yet. Don't know that they will. In the meantime, I think we can stack a couple of these washers together. And looks like 3 of them is going to be the right amount. So we'll need those. And where these are going to go are right here on your sway bar mounts. It's just going to allow that plate to lay flat. So hopefully the washers are adequate enough that you can get your bolt down in there. So we'll use 3 on one side and the provided spacer on the other. Take our mounting plate and we'll set it right on top. You want to make sure that your holes are lined up, which they are. Everything looks in pretty good shape. And so you can pretty much follow the instructions that are provided. If you're going to put your, like I said before, if you're going to put your toe mounts back on, you just set them right on there. Otherwise, in these back bolts, you're going to want to make sure that you've got a lock washer and a bolt and a washer. So you put your lock washer on, then your bolt, and then if you're not using your toe hook bolts, that's where you would install these. And you just tighten those all the way down. The back ones, they do provide you with, they're a little bit thinner. They're a 3/8 bolts. And we're going to do the same thing. Make sure you've got a lock washer on there, and a washer, and then you put your bolt in the back, and you'll tighten that up. One tip is that you start all your bolts first before you tighten them all up. So I also wanted to point out that the back bolts are 16mm, and you want to torque these down to 75 foot-pounds. Now, once you've got it mounted on there, you're happy with it, you're pleased with it, so the next step's going to be put a winch on here. You would think, but from doing a little bit of research, I have learned that ahead of time that you're better off to put your front rollers on if you bought one with rollers, because you're not going to be able to get the bolts in afterward. So you set that winch on there, you won't be able to get the bolts in. So we're going to go ahead and mount that plate on first, then we'll set the winch up here. Yeah, you'll unbox your stuff. If you're missing hardware or components or need, call. Okay, enough said there. Anyhow, get back to the nitty gritty. They do have some pretty nice looking parts. Comes with a strap, a hook, which is pretty nice. We'll need that. And of course, our front rollers. Now those look nice, very well built. I don't think I could be any happier with the level of quality that went into just this piece alone. We got our mounting bolts right here. And I did check this one out ahead of time. I did look through to make sure all the components were there. So hopefully the install will go nice and smooth for us. Put our bolt through. I guess decide what location we're going to want. I'm going to opt with the center one. And I'm not tightening them up right now. I'm just getting them on there and getting them started. Looks pretty neat though. I kind of like it. It'll look even better with the rest of it. Do not think that this is a light piece of equipment. It is heavy. Oop, looked in my pocket. There we go. Oh yeah. That is one good looking piece of equipment. Now I'll say this, if it functions near as good as it looks, we're in good shape. I'm going to leave this cover on here. That'll be one of the last things I do is take that off so it doesn't scratch that up. And you want to line our bolt holes up from underneath, and then we'll put our bolts in and tighten it down. So you'll find your remote control box and controller box, and inside there is where we'll find our mounting bolts, or what appears to be mounting bolts. And all the rest of this. Here's our fancy remote. And looks like we got the controller mounting brackets, electronics, battery cables. Alright, so I'm getting ready to mount this on there, and I was trying to figure out how this goes, but it looks like you got to slide the square nut inside here, and that way whenever you slide this over, when the bolt comes up through, then you'll be able to access that, the back side of that nut. So I'm noticing that my bolts will not go in. They hit the bumper. So I might have to loosen this plate back up to be able to tighten those two front bolts. It might be a little bit of an extra aggravation for me to take that back loose, and it is, but I'm going to rest knowing that if it's that hard for me to get those two front bolts in, to get this winch on there, it's going to be that hard for the guy trying to steal it off the front of my Jeep to get those bolts out of there. So I'll sleep better knowing that anyway. We've got our winch mounted on here successfully. Got our mounting plate mounted on nice and tight. These bolts are still loose, so we're going to go ahead and tighten those up. If you haven't already, you can do so now. And next step is going to be to put our control box on. And like our big giant warning states, we want to loosen this mounting bracket up before we mount that on there. And we also need to assemble it. So we'll have to get our brackets together, bolt it together, and get it mounted up. So we'll go back to our box of goodies and find our hardware kit for mounting our control head. It's sitting in here too. So this is what we're going to be putting together next. I guess I'm going to take this off now. Alright, so like I said, you want to get these tightened up. There's two options. It comes with a mounting bracket you can mount. So your controller goes over here, or you can put them in the center. I opted for the one that went in the center. I'm not really sure, but the way they tell you to mount it, it can still move around. So I'm not too sure what's going on with that at this point. I'm guessing once we get these wires over here and mounted, it'll be a little more secure. So the next step we're going to do is connect some of our cables up to where they need to be on the motor and to the battery. I do want to point out that Smittybilt did include this beautiful chart that shows you exactly what to connect, where to connect it. You just follow these instructions exactly the way they say. Now, it should be pretty obvious that this is going to be the one that goes to our battery positive. And these are color coded and labeled. So we'll connect those on the back side, just like it said in the instructions. And if you look, it's kind of hard to tell. They're actually marked with a D or a C, as well as being color coded with the yellow for the yellow. Alright, something I want to make sure that I point out. The unit advertised as waterproof, but that also takes into consideration that you install it right. And one of the things you want to pay super close attention to is getting these rubber boots installed correctly. And if you look down in here, I've pushed one on, and you see it's still got some exposure. So that's not going to work for us. So you're going to need to get you a little tool. It's a little pick tool to stretch that out. And of course, if it's warmer out, this would be a lot easier. So you get that under there and just work it all the way around. so you get that boot all the way on. So the next thing I want to do, now that I've got these wires connected, before I go and hook up my power cable and my negative cable to the battery, which is going to be one of our last steps, I want to go ahead and unhook this rubber strap to the cable. I'm going to bring that cable through our rollers, and I want to hook up our hook. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this lever into free spool mode. I'll do that by pulling that lever, and that will allow us to be able to move this. Get a little rubber piece off of there. Pull it through. Alright, so we got it through. When you take our clevis pin, now depending on how you want it, if you want your hook, you can change it, whatever, and make a difference, I don't guess. So you know that's not coming out. Good there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to route my cables down underneath, right here where the radiator goes. I'm going to go underneath here. You can see it come right out along through there. And then you'll be able to see it coming through the bottom there. And then I'll strap it up alongside. So you can see I've got both cables running up from underneath down there, and I route them up alongside here to get to the battery. Alright, so we ran the cables down underneath here, and we came up just right in front of the radiator out of these two cables here. You can see the metal flange, so you're behind it. I use the zip ties, run the cables alongside the air box, and we'll run back over here to the battery, and then I'm going to remove the nuts. We'll attach our cables right to the battery. So we're going to need to loosen up our connections, positive and negative, and attach our cables. Now, something else you can do is you can find a couple of different nuts and just put them on the outside and tighten that nut down, instead of trying to figure out how to get this to attach. Just a couple different ways you can attach the cables. I like to attach them right straight to the lead leads, get them a nice decent contact, because you are going to be drawing quite a bit of amperage across these cables. Make sure you get your terminals snugged up pretty good. move to the next step. So of course the next step is going to be to install our remote. Pretty fancy looking, kind of nice. Just take this end in, plug it in. And make sure that we're still in the engaged, where I had moved it to free spool to get the line out. I got in, and out. Now that works pretty slick. Well, I think that's pretty cool. Not only does it work well, but it looks well too. Looks well? Huh. I think it looks pretty awesome, if I do say so myself. Now, it looks like the cord is plenty long enough to do whatever we need it to do. I think overall it's pretty good. So now you learned how to mount one, install it, wire it up. Smittybilt has a pretty good name, pretty good reputation. Supposed to be good for 9,500 pounds. We've got it mounted on there. It's pretty solid. I think the only thing left to do is to test it out, right? And I know just the thing to try it on. Come with me. So, like I said, I've got just the thing. Try it on. We've got this Bobcat stuck. It weighs about 4,000 pounds. Plus, with it being down to the axle in mud, I'd say we're probably closer to 6, 7, maybe reaching our 9,500 pound limit. It's not in there as bad as it looks. We can see it's above the ground on this side. So, should be able to just ease it right out of there.